ahead of talks between US President Donald Trump and China's President Xi Jinping, Apple is shifting the assembly of its new Mac Pro models from here into the US to China. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. For more on what this means for the trade war and the trade talks tomorrow at the G20, I'm joined by Michael Harrison. He leads Eurasia Group's coverage of China. So President Trump's not going to be happy about this, is he?
He may not be. He may even tweet about it. But it shows you how important China is to Apple. And really, Tim Cook and Apple, they have been caught literally in the middle of this trade war. And Tim Cook has been quite astute politically about balancing between both sides. And so this is perhaps a nod to the Chinese side, although I'm sure there was a business case as well.
Does this come as a surprise to you?
It's a bit of a surprise coming in the midst of the trade war and some tariff risk here. But you know, this is not the big mass market product like iPhones, which of course are already made in China. But with a mass market product, I think it would be even more exceptional to move it to China with the risk that the U.S. could be slapping tariffs on these products.
So when it comes to the trade talks between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump in Osaka on Saturday, the main linchpin, or one of the main linchpins, I should say, is really Huawei and what's going to happen with that. If neither side is willing to budge, can there even be a trade truce?
It's hard to see. It's hard to see the Chinese side really moving if there's no solution for Huawei. And there's a direct impact of this in the sense that if one of China's leading tech companies is going down, it's hard politically even for the Chinese to sit down at the negotiating table. But there's also a really important indirect effect, which is if Huawei goes down, it's going to make China that much more reluctant to make concessions on some of the technology policies that are at the heart of this trade dispute. So even if negotiations were to continue, I don't think they would get anywhere. So you're absolutely right. Huawei is one of the essential questions coming out of this conversation between Trump and Xi.
So in the Democrat debate last night, Mayor Pete Buttigieg actually made I think a very sort of fair and sound point, and that is no matter how many tariffs you slap on Chinese goods, it will never fundamentally change the structure of the Chinese economy. Do you agree with that?
I do. And I think everyone, even within the Trump administration, would argue that there needs to be a stronger effort to work with allies to create additional pressure on China. I'd say everyone in the Trump administration except the president, and it's because he's so determined to pick trade fights with some of those same allies, Japan, the EU, and I think that is really the most important weakness of the current U.S. strategy against China. It's that failure to engage more allies in this fight because pressure alone is not going to do it.
Actually, at the G20 so far, President Xi Jinping urged leaders for a fair market environment. Some might say this is a little bit hypocritical, but I want our audience to listen to this.
Countries should not close their door when seeking development, and neither should they artificially interfere in the market.
Xi Jinping there. What do you make of those comments, given what China's been accused of?
Oh, it's absolutely directed towards President Trump. He has given Xi Jinping a bit of an opening to make that claim, but I think you're right. I think the audience that's intended for, I think they see through that. And the truth is that although many countries don't agree with the tactics that the Trump administration is using, they share many of the same concerns with China's current level of openness in their economy. So I think there's a limited extent to which Xi gets mileage from that kind of criticism.
So overall, what has been the impact of the tariffs so far on the Chinese economy?
It's been important, but manageable. I would say the Chinese are concerned, but not panicked. And they have more stimulus measures that are coming online that I think give them a reasonable degree of security that if trade talks don't go well, they can ride this out, at least in the short term. The big issue, which they don't have an answer for, is supply chains migrating from China to Vietnam, to Thailand, to Mexico. And that is hard to quantify. It's something that Chinese leaders are worried about, and that's something where they are quite passive. They don't have many tools to fight against that. So that's, I think, a really important watch point for the medium term. And it's, again, we don't know what the impact will be, but it's significant.
Michael Harrison, my first, have a great weekend. Thank you. You mentioned you'll be watching the G20 summit tomorrow.